Okay, thanks for everyone. Welcome everyone, and thanks for being here on this this special meeting it's emergency meeting, I guess, on the official notice of non-compliance from China for export of Canadian canola seeds. And this morning with us we have, as individual, Mr. William Gerard Inverworth Limited. Welcome, Mr. Gerard. And also Mark Kahn, canola producer. Mr. Kahn, welcome to our committee this morning. And also from the Western Canadian Wheat Growers Association, Stephen van der Valk, Vice President from Alberta. Thanks for being here, Mr. van der Valk. And also, just to for our fellow MPs, we have in audience, I guess I'd like to draw the attention of members of the presence in the public of a delegation from the Prairie Oats Growers Association. Several board members from across the prairies are attending our meeting and would be grateful to exchange with you after the meeting. So just to let you know, and thanks for being here, all you oats growers from the Western province. So right now we'll start with, as you know, we have a vote. We, I think, have time for the opening statements, and hopefully we'll be back to hear the questions. So opening statements, if you want to start, Mr. van der Valk, up to 6 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Mr. Chair, members of Parliament, thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. My name is Stephen van der Valk. I'm a fourth-generation farmer from Fort Macleod area of southern Alberta, and I've been farming my whole life. I am past president of the Grain Growers of Canada and current director with the Western Canadian Wheat Growers. Most grain farmers are an entrepreneurial group. We were pleased when the Wheat Board was disbanded and we were able to sell our grain competitively on the world market ourselves. We were pleased when the current government said that they wanted to increase agriculture exports by 25% by 2025. We were pleased that the trade agreements have been signed with CETA and CPTPP. But when grain growers are caught in innocent political pawns in events that we have no control over, we always pay the price. I currently plant 4,500 acres to canola. Since the announcement in early March by China that they are putting a stop on the importation of Canadian canola, the futures bid have dropped, costing me $50,000 on my old crop, or what I have in the bin today. Looking at the 2019 crop, I potentially lose another $100,000, or much more if this continues. The worst case scenario is that there will not be any bids for canola. Multiply that across 43,000 Canadian canola growers in Western Canada, and we face potential loss in the billions. Yes, let me repeat that. We face potential losses in the billions of dollars. That's real money out of every grain farmer's bottom line. Imagine a loss of that magnitude as it rolls out and impacts machinery and truck dealers, local suppliers, support services, and all the ancillary services. The cost is enormous. The timing of this issue and the timing of me being here could not be worse. I should be at home seeding, and thankfully my family is able to help cover for me. The season is short, and this issue is weighing heavy on every grain farmer. You already know that China is the largest end market for Canadian canola, accounting for approximately 40% of all Canadian canola products exported annually. In 2018, canola seed exported to China generated $2.7 billion, according to the Canola Council, and that Canadian canola crop contributes $26.7 billion annually to the Canadian economy. The statement from China that they are not buying our canola because of dangerous pests is ludicrous. Canada is noted to consistently grow and export the best grain in the world. This is a political issue, pure and simple. Political problems need political solutions. If we must play the game of grain inspection, so be it. But in the meantime, Canadian grain farmers are the ones paying the price for the political failings. I remind this committee that it is not the only current agricultural failing that grain farmers are facing. The list of significant trade issues for Canadian grains industry has grown long. Italy is no longer importing the world's best Canadian durum due to non-tariff trade barriers. The past few years, we have usually exported 1 million tons valued at $250 million. The durum market has been decimated. In fact, we can't even sell it. Peru has stopped importing Canadian wheat, our sixth largest market, claiming that we have a weed seed issue. At over 1 million tons, that's another 200 million. Vietnam has stopped importing Canadian wheat, claiming that it has got thistle seeds in it. That's markets at over 4 million. India has applied massive tariffs on our pulse crops, valued at over 1 billion. Saudi Arabia is not importing our wheat and barley, valued over 4 million due to diplomatic dispute. In case you weren't adding up these numbers, that's over 4.2 billion in direct export sales annually. Using multiplier effect 1.5, this is a potential loss to our economy of 6.3 billion. Grain farmers aren't looking for financial handouts. We're looking to grow our exports, our crops on a level playing field. We can compete with any country in the world if we don't have one arm tied behind our back. Unfair non-tariff trade barriers and one-sided taxes such as the carbon tax force Canadian grain farmers into impossible situations. We ask you not to force us into uncompetitive situations. The combined potential loss through export losses of China, Italy, Peru, Vietnam, India, and Saudi Arabia is staggering. Canada can feed the world, but not if our government does not act strongly on our behalf, removing non-tariff trade barriers, enforcing existing trade agreements, and removing political roadblocks. This week, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change announced $12 million in funding to Loblaws, one of Canada's largest companies owned by one of Canada's richest families. Frankly, it is embarrassing and a slap in the face to grain farmers when this takes place. If you truly want ingenuity and a clean economy, support agriculture. Support us not through handouts, but by getting out of the way of the modernization and growing practices that we've been developing for the past 20 years. Agriculture has been on a leading edge of environmental protection, sequestering carbon through our low-till and no-till seeding, using GPS and AI, and minimizing our inputs and carbon footprint, all the while maximizing grain output. If you want to effectively maximize the benefits of Canadian agriculture, take the steps necessary today to reduce and eliminate the barriers that farmers are facing today. We plan our crop rotations in a very scientific manner. Factors such as soil types, market, history of crops on the piece of land, fertilizer, and other inputs are all used to determine what crops we should plant. We do this every year well in advance of spring seeding. Now we are faced with a huge disruption that changes everything. Are farmers concerned? We sure are, and rightly so. Our future depends on these outcomes. These combined issues are already becoming the largest crisis our farm has ever seen in 100 years of our farm. Give us the assurance that you're resolving these issues, not with empty words, but with actions. Show us what you mean, what you say. Thank you, and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Van der Valk, and now Mr. Gerard for up to 6 minutes.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me to Ottawa today to address the committee on this very important issue of canola trade to China. My name is Will Gerard. I'm a 35-year-old fourth-generation farmer. My wife Jacqueline and I have 3 young children. We're partners in a family farm located just south of Riding Mountain National Park in western Manitoba. We have tried to implement a diverse crop rotation, including hemp, wheat, canola, soybeans, peas, and grass seed. The invention of canola was a huge boost to farms in western Canada, especially in the cool parkland region where I farm. This is quite evident if you drive through or fly over my area in the summer, as you will see a full 50% of the fields are yellow canola crops in full bloom. Over the past 40 years of growing canola on our farm, it evolved from a small acreage specialty crop to become a cornerstone of predictable profits. Of course, as with anything in farming, not without its ups and downs. In my short 17-year farming career, we have sold canola as low as $6.50 a bushel and as high as $15 a bushel. Yields have ranged from 20 bushels per acre when a disastrous August frost struck in 2004, up to 70 bushels per acre when everything clicks just right to produce a bumper crop. Prior to 2019, 3 crops we produced faced significant trade and marketing issues. In 2017, low-cost Chinese hemp seed hitting the international market played a significant role in buyers in the hemp seed exporting and processing industry losing premium markets. This resulted in a price drop of 20 to 30% for this commodity, making it unprofitable for us to produce. Everyone is aware of the impact of the India tariffs on pulse crops, causing prices of peas and lentils to drop significantly for Canadian growers. More recently, the slump in soybean futures prices in the U.S., due in part to China backing away from U.S. soybean imports, has also impacted soybean prices in a negative way for Canadian growers. Admittedly, peas and hemp were relatively small acreage crops for us, and we were able to shift acres to larger market crops like soybeans and wheat. With the recent blockage of Canadian canola going into China and in turn the dollar bushel drop in canola prices, I think I speak for my fellow farmers in Manitoba in expressing concern that we were running out of profitable crops to grow. The recent drop in canola prices caused a direct loss to our farm on remaining canola inventories from the 2018 year, totaling about $70,000. I'm concerned that prices will continue to drop if this issue is not resolved and seed inventories build in Canada, and losses next year on our farm could be in the hundreds of thousands. This money is lost from the local economy forever. Seeded canola acres will most certainly drop this spring, and this acreage will shift to smaller market crops and drive the price of those commodities lower as well. As you can see, the trickle-down effects of the canola ban to China are numerous and significant. Where I live in western Manitoba, grain farming creates a massive share of the economic activity in our local communities. Some of the big employers in the area consist of agricultural equipment dealers, crop input retailers, and grain purchasing and processing companies. I have already heard talk amongst fellow growers about canceling machinery orders and cutting back on crop inputs for the coming year. When farm profits suffer, the economic well-being of our entire community will suffer just as much. Farmers are constantly striving to become more efficient with their inputs. We've invested in technologies invented by Canadian companies, such as precision seed and fertilizer placement, sectional control to eliminate over-application of pesticides and fertilizers. We have done these things out of necessity to remain competitive in the global marketplace. A worst-case scenario for us is to lose the global markets we have worked so hard to obtain and stay competitive in. I urge members of Parliament from all parties to work together with industry and farmers. We have worked hard to develop a safe and reliable oilseed crop in canola, and we don't want to lose it.
Thank you, Mr. Gerard. So, bills have, do I have the consent to continue to hear the third? We're all good on that. Okay, Mr. Khan for up to 6 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Mark Kahn. I'm a third-generation farmer on the land that I own. I produce wheat, barley, peas, and canola. A rotation of crops for best agronomic practices for minimum disease issues and maximum yield. A GPS precision farming practice of variable rate technology for seed and fertilizer, sectional control of herbicide application to maximize my return on investment and minimize environmental impacts. Yield data is collected digitally at time of harvest to build fertility maps for the next year's seed and fertility variable rate maps. We have practiced minimum tillage for over 30 years. In our operation, we use consultants for agronomy, fertility, and grain marketing. All seed is treated for soil-borne pathogens. In the case of canola seed, we use up-to-date genetics with resistance to blackleg and clubroot. I'm a graduate of Olds College in crop production and currently serve on my second term on the Board of Governors of that college. I carry an Alberta Environment license to apply agricultural herbicides and seed treatments. I have over 40 years of seed production experience in wheat, barley, peas, and canola, and was an authorized seed cleaner and seed grader under the CFIA and the Canadian Seed Institute. The situation today is I am holding on my farm 500 metric tons of unpriced 2018 crop. My 2018 production was just over 600 metric tons. My first 100 metric tons was contracted in the summer and sold and delivered in November for $11.30. The first week of February, prices seen were around $11, and I was getting ready to sell the rest of my crop. 10 days later, my crop was worth $1 a bushel less at the minimum, a cost of $25,000 to my bottom line. Changing cropping plans really doesn't work to maintain best agronomic practices in this spring. Canola seed has been purchased. I have 50 bags waiting in the warehouse at $600 a bag. Fertilizer has been bought and booked. Switching to other crops is hard because cereal seed is in short supply in Alberta. Storage of last year's crop will be tricky. We have some of the canola has got a green count to it, and it is susceptible to heating in the bins. I would like to move that as soon as possible. I don't have room to carry 2 years of production in my storage facilities. Cash flow is needed for all farmers. Changing seeding plans impacts seed retailers. Seed purchases will be made in January and February and booked for May. I would hate to phone my seed supplier and tell him I don't need that $25,000 worth of seed, because now what does he do with it? And then 15 other farmers phone him to do the same thing. As a Canadian producer, I take pride in producing safe, clean products for export around the world. I have never had a contamination issue with any of my products. I have never been turned away at an elevator. Unknown factors such as this situation are not foreseeable and cause great disruption in our operations, impacting future production and farm finances. If I was to get hailed out, I have an insurance for that. If my canola is not being able to be hauled or delivered, I have no insurance for that. Diversification of our markets needs improvement. Government intervention is needed, and pressure is needed to be put on more forcefully. Canadian canola is contaminated. It's contaminated with political dirt and bureaucracy. No pathogens or weed seeds are in our canola. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. So I think we'll probably be back after the vote around noon. And my suggestion is that we do one round with this panel, and then hopefully there won't be any other interruption, and then we'll move on with the other one. It might take some time. Pardon?
Are you proposing to extend the length of the meeting by a half hour then to accommodate everybody?
Well, apparently some members can't stay after they've got some other meeting, so I can ask around, but that's what's
We can
that's
stay.
what. Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll have to
There's
stop.
travel a long way just in front of planning. not to
I
be here.
certainly agree, yeah. But again, I would have to have the consent of the whole committee, and I know some have already got some other meetings. I can ask around, but I mean, that's what I've been told by some of the members here, so. Anyways, so we'll be back at noon, and we will have a question round, okay? Oh. Okay, we might as well get going. Let's continue with our panel this morning. We'll go right to the question, and we'll start with Mr. Dreeshen for 6 minutes.
Oh, no, start, Mr. Speaker. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
I'm sorry. I just have a quick question to Mr. Van der Valk. Just before, Monsieur le Président, je suis vraiment déçu encore une fois ce matin. La Chambre a refusé.
Chairman, very disappointed. The House refused to have an emergency debate on canola. I think that all parliamentarians should be involved and discuss this important issue and how it's affecting the people that they represent. I wanted to express my disappointment. Mr. Van der Wald, you said very clearly this morning that this is a political crisis to your mind. What do you think this political crisis is based on?
It is a tough one because you can speculate that maybe some specific executive could have been tipped off and not been taken into custody, and maybe that would be part of what this is. But that's all speculation, right? So it's hard to say. But we know China's been done this in the past. But what we need to do is get to the bottom of it, and we need to be sending over the people over to figure out what their excuse is and say, hey, this is not true. But the problem with that is they're not taking those people, from what I understand. And is that because of the relationships between the two governments? I don't know, but I don't have the answer to that. That's what we're here for, and that's what your job is. And we're here to, have to grow the crop. And it's your job to make sure our markets are there. At least that's what we feel. And so hopefully we can, whatever there needs to be done to fix that relationship, we need to get that done ASAP, because we're almost out of time. Within the next 3 weeks, it's out of time. So.
Chose certaine, Monsieur Van der Walk.
Mr. Van der Walk, one thing's for sure, there is a problem because 8 days ago, more than a week ago, we sent a request to have this technical meeting. I don't know if they sent it by sea because it's taking at least a week and this to get to them, no response. And this illustrates the situation between the two countries. Mr. Dreeshen has some important questions as well on this matter.
And of course, I appreciate Mr. Van der Walk's points, and we more or less said that we have a government that's in crisis management mode, but unfortunately the crisis isn't the plight of Western Canadian canola producers. I think we've heard from CFIA, we've had to go to Trade Committee, not Ag, in order to speak to the ministers on this and to talk to some of our trade officials. And we've also heard from national commodity groups. The point now is to talk to farmers that are being affected, the ones that are going to be out there putting the seed in the ground. Mr. Khan, I'd like to just ask you first of all the question. Very few people understand the seed business and the things that are associated with that, the insurance, but also the inspections and all of the other things that are associated with that. And when you see seed that is going to perhaps be held over for another year, there's issues associated with that as well. I wonder if you could give us some insight in that.
Thank you, Bill. So, in my case, like I mentioned in my presentation, that seed is ordered early on in the year, and it has to be because some years it is short. Carrying over seed can cause depletion and germination. Quite often the seed is already treated, And I mentioned also that canola seed is like $600 to $700 a bag, which is a big investment to have sitting on your shelves. For a seed retailer to stock and hold this stuff over year after year is unformidable. And as I also mentioned, this year, due to the severe fall we had, other seed crops which we could switch to are basically unavailable because of poor germination and things like that. And, you know, if you get, it's fine if one or two farmers change their decisions in your area, but if the whole province all of a sudden doesn't want to grow canola, now there's a shortage on cereals or peas or whatever else. And seed stocks are an expensive thing to keep year after year. So it's really hard to change your rotations in that regard too, because if there's no seed, you're stuck. Like, and I mentioned before, I have 50 bags of canola sitting in my warehouse at $600 or $700 a bag, and I want to use it. I don't want to change to something else, because then there's another cost to switching also. So
Some of the discussion has to do that we've been kind of left on the sideline as far as China's discussions and the U.S. discussions on trade. And of course, if it is true that something may be happening between those two countries, the fact that we are on the sidelines because we have chosen to be aggressive or and with each of those countries, how likely is it that we're going to find cooperation as we expand through those trade deals? Stephen, perhaps if you could just talk about that.
Sure, yeah, it's a huge concern because, okay, so it's a huge concern because if tomorrow there's a new deal with China, United States, there goes potentially a 25% of the canola market because they might bring in soybeans or whatnot because it's easily interchangeable. So it's a huge concern that we would maybe be on the outs because of something that had nothing to do with us. And yeah, if they have a new agreement with the U.S., then we could be on the sidelines and not being able to sell
Thank
the
you,
canola
Mr.
even
Van der
worse.
Valk. Monsieur Drouin pour 6 minutes.
6 minutes, Mr. Drouin.
Coming down and making the trip down here. One of we did get the opportunity to hear from your associations last week, and one of the issues was raising advance payment increase to $1 million. Is that something that you would see as useful for you guys, or to help with cash flow? Yeah, I'll start with Mr. Vanderwalk. And
Sure. I'm not sure I want to dig a deeper hole, taking on more debt. So it's something that, yeah, I guess with cash flow, but is that the answer? If you don't have enough money to put your crop in, you just take on more debt and they allow you, even if it's interest-free, hypothetically, it's not something that is a long-term solution at all. In fact, it may make the problem worse. So maybe that's an easy short-term solution, make everybody feel okay about it, but I don't think that's a long-term solution whatsoever, unless it's something where the money doesn't get paid back, but obviously that's not going to happen. But I don't think that's a very good. It's a short-term solution, but not a long-term one.
that's right. With that, I think that's the point. It was to help alleviate some of the.
But if the
pressures.
markets aren't there, all you've done is taken on more debt that you can't pay back.
Mr. Khan, do you?
yeah, it's in my mind that's just a Band-Aid effect, and as Stephen said here, you're just digging yourself into a deeper hole. It's nothing that I would do because I try to stay farthest away from debt as I possibly can. I think if this gets hung out to dry longer and longer, I'm gonna cut to the chase and take my losses, and that affects what I buy next year or what I don't buy. Presently, I think if I get through this year, I doubt if I'll really see anything in the black. When you take 10% of my canola price away, that's the cream of the crop, and that's what I sometimes have to live on. So it's kind of a double negative. I've got about $25,000 worth of seed sitting there to pay for, and I'm minus $25,000. So, and when I went to school, that's $50,000, and I'm basically a small farmer anymore. So no, that's not the way I'd like to do it.
Mr. Jordan?
Yeah, I would echo what the other guys said here. For me personally, I wouldn't use that money, at least for sure not this year. I mean, down the road, I guess if we kept carrying, if we were actually losing money, and that's a different story. But I don't think that's the situation we want to get ourselves into. I think we want to more focus on recovering the trade, getting the trade somewhere else if we have to, so that prices come back to a fair world price that's reflected back to us here in Western Canada, so that we can be profitable. And I think if there is a way to kind of give farmers something financially, it's through agri-stability.
Can I have one comment to that?
Sure.
I think that sometimes the numbers are a little behind. I give a quick example. We have probably about 600,000 bushels of storage on our farm, times that by $2 a bushel, or maybe even 700,000. It's called $1.4 million worth of grain storage. That's just bins, right? If we're carrying half the crop over, where do you come up with $700,000 to buy new bins? We're talking $300 of inputs on 4,500 acres of canola. That's $1.3 million worth of inputs alone that's not going out into the economy. That's just on my farm. So I guess some examples of some numbers.
And I understand that obviously the ultimate solution and the perfect solution is to get China to buy canola again, and I think nobody's disputing that around this table. But if it doesn't happen in the short term, I know the Canola Council was asking to increase the biodiesel standard from 2% to 5% to generate more demand locally. Is that something that you see as a good step, or no comments? Or
I don't know the numbers well enough, I guess, to know how much canola that would use up off the top of my head. My gut feeling is it wouldn't make a huge amount of difference. I mean, it can't hurt, I guess, to use more biodiesel if it's, again, it's probably going to require help from the government to make that work. But yeah, I wouldn't really know if that'll be a huge game changer for us or not.
It's nice for things like that to be market driven and not be government driven, right? And so at the end of the day, we want things to be market driven. So I just worry that what the consequences to that are later on. But yes, that would help with demand. There's no doubt. It's just nice for things to be market driven.
yeah, Mr. Khan, any?
Yeah, every little bit helps, but being from an oil province, I don't think my oil counterparts are gonna support that either. So, it's the real thing is we got to get this canola going, and we have to stop the light-footed dance around the subject. We need our current government to pay attention to what's going on with this issue. It is an issue, and it's really concerning to our sector. The lack of interest and the lack of
I'm sorry, how do you say lack of interest? So I'm asking you because they've been meeting with. Yeah.
Time is up.
Sorry.
We'll move to Mr. McGregor for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you to the three of you for appearing before our committee today. I think it's quite evident from your opening statements the level of concern that people have. And I hope that we as parliamentarians can find a way to bring this debate, I think, to the House of Commons as well. I think we have a lot of members of Parliament who represent canola-producing regions. I'm not one of them, but I think as the elected representatives of the people of Canada, especially in canola regions, we need to have that ability to focus our attention on this. Now, I substituted on the International Trade Committee last week when we had Minister Carr and Minister Bibeau, and both explained some of the efforts that the Government of Canada is making, the working groups that have been formed, the need to send a high-level delegation to China. But I want to know, given what you have seen from the Government of Canada, and I agree that we need a Team Canada approach where we don't make this a partisan issue, where we're all working together because of the value of this crop, and it's one of our flagship agricultural exports. But are we doing enough? I would like to maybe hear from the three of you of your ideas, because you're the producers and this is your chance to get on the testimony, what more you would like to do, because I heard in your opening statement that more forceful pressure is needed. So, how long do we wait for China to agree to this high-level delegation before we regard it as a loss of face? And furthermore, when we're looking at the size of the Chinese market, are we sometimes blinded by that with regards to how they've dealt with other countries in the past when threats to their national pride have been made? They've dealt quite harshly with other countries before in completely unrelated manners, and now we're kind of suffering this. So, going forward, are we doing enough? How long should we wait before we start looking at other things, like the fact that we have a $40 billion trade deficit with China? Just love to hear some of your comments on that.
I'll go first. I think it's tough with China. Like, I don't pretend to be an expert on international trade or negotiations, but I think we may have to send some kind of a message back to them. That's my personal opinion. And I don't know, like, if they won't have us over there, then that's a problem. Like, we either have to find another market or we have to find a way to get back in there. And like I said, I don't really think I'm qualified to say how that should be done, but it would be nice to see something done.
Yeah, I think it's, like I said before, I think it's time to start playing hardball, and there's a pile of imports that come into this country from China, and maybe some of their ships should sit and wait in the water while we decide to unload them also. So, it's two can play the game, and I don't think the situation, the way it's being dealt with right now, is really getting us anywhere. So what's next?
I can speak as a farmer, right? That's my expertise. I'm not an international trade lawyer or a politician, but it seems like they would have more to lose than us if we have a trade deficit. But that being said, putting them on more pressure, I don't know what the answer is to that. That's what we lean to you guys to do. But it seems like what we're doing isn't working, and for them not to even entertain having a delegation come is probably where to start. Why is that the case? Has a relationship broken down that much that we can't even? Or is this just part of their negotiation tactic? We all know they've done it before. But at the end of the day, I can speak as an expert as in agriculture, but we just need this problem fixed, and that's your job, right? And so that's what we just need to figure that out. And I know it's not easy. It's not easy to say put more pressure on. I get that. It's just not that simple. But there's got to be ways of, if this has happened before, we got to know what the solution is, and we just got to get to that solution. Can't be a year from now. I get it. It's not going to be next week, but.
And as part of the conversation over diversifying our markets, I know the Canola Council of Canada, in their 2018 report, they want to increase our processing capacity of oil up to 14 million metric tons. And of course, the value of oil compared to seed is quite a big differential there. Do you think we need to pay more attention to increasing our refining capacity? Because phytosanitary concerns with oil, it's kind of hard to make the same kind of an argument.
I would agree with that. I personally haul my canola to a crush plant, and that way I don't have to wait for the trains to show up at the grain elevators. Approximately 10 days after I've signed the contract, I'm hauling, and they give you a day to haul and at a time to be there. With dealing with other inland terminals, lack of rail space or rail cars showing up has caused grief. I recall 2 or 3 years ago signing a February contract and getting to haul that in May when I should have been seeding. So crush plants are the end user, and they need product. And if I go home and I want to sell my canola, I know which facility I'm going to phone.
Thank you, Mr. Khan, and that'll be all for the time that we have for this panel. So I want to thank you, Mr. Van der Valk, Mr. Khan, and Mr. Gerard for taking the time to come and express, how it is down on the farm. So that'll be all. We shall break for about 2 minutes to get the other panel in, and then we shall, Mr. Berthold.
Monsieur le Président, je veux juste leur demander une dernière.
I'd like to ask once again, I think the people have had time to look at their agendas today. If we could perhaps extend the meeting by 30 minutes, we could each have 15 minutes. I've been told they all have meetings.
To put a motion on that on the table to request
Mr.
for.
Hoback, please.
I didn't want to put a motion.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a friendly amendment
Yeah.
to prolong the motion. So I just heard that the Liberals won't accept.
Yeah, so we have to have it. Okay, so we shall suspend and return. Thank you. Second panel, we're good? We got work to do. Okay, so thanks everyone for being here again today for our second hour. On a les producteurs de grains du Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean.
We have the producteurs de graines du Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, represented by Mr. Pierre Murray and Mr. William Van Tassel. Welcome to our session this morning.
Old Farmer LPG Farms, thank you for being here. And also by video conference, Terry Yuzwa, producer.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, from Nipawin, Saskatchewan. So I assume you hear me and we hear you very, very best. So now we'll start with 6 minutes, 6 minutes aux producteurs de grains du
6 minutes for the Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean grain producers. You have the floor. Microphone, please. We are, since 1987, corporation, les producteurs agricoles de Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean. I thank you for inviting us here this morning. As a producer from the Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean and as a canola producer, we are directly affected by the canola crisis. The first rumors that a canola ship was turned away in China hit us in mid-February 2019, followed by confirmation by Chinese authorities on March 1st. The impact on canola contracts and canola prices are very clear. During the week of February 4th to the 8th, the canola price was stable at about $492 the ton. But with the drop in the market at the beginning of that time period, there was a drop of prices of $25 a ton, $35 a ton, rather, in the space of 2 months, which represented 7% in terms of Chinese market closure. Of course, Quebec canola is not just exported. It's principally used at the crush plant in Bécancour. But the structure of pricing is local, and our producers are deeply affected by the drop in canola prices. Beyond the prices and other quantifiable market losses, we have to add the uncertainty about access to the Chinese market. China is a huge outlet for Quebec soya, as well as for genetically modified products. And despite the indications that something would be done to improve the relations between Canada and China, we have not seen many results. The markets don't like uncertainty, and there are different sources of soya trade that have slowed down as well for Quebec. Canola producers also produce soya in Quebec. In addition, there is collateral damage that occurs. The president and CEO of Richardson feels that there will be a drop of some 10% in terms of the canola area that is planted in Western Canada. This is going to have a spill-off effect on other cereal producers. In 2019-2020, there can be a surplus of cereal grains in Western Canada, and that will mean a drop in prices in Quebec, because much of what we produce is destined for the American market. North American market. As well as I mentioned, there's another layer of problems, which is canola, and that is negatively impacting Quebec. I'll take over now. I've been producing Canada since 1988 in Lac-Saint-Jean, but in addition to the impact on the markets, there is another problem. Our producers are very concerned about competitors and their agreements with China and the United States. Anytime there is a trade dispute, that creates very significant disadvantages. In the case of canola, the American PLC program, it pays some $90 US per hectare and $125 per hectare, somewhere in between that for 2016-2017. And yet that represents some 1% of the eligible net sales. We can't minimize the crop insurance program in the United States, which is very generous for canola. On average, the premium is $35 to $40 Canadian in 2016-2018. The intervention is some $8 in Quebec. For the basic American programs, the ARC and PLC provide some $100 million over an area of planting of some 34 million hectares. This represents some $26 Canadian per hectare. In the context of the trade dispute with China for 2018-2019, there'll be some $9 billion Canadian for soya. That is a supplementary amount of some $269 Canadian additional for each hectare. And here in Canada, this represents what? $10 to $12 for soya. That's what we have here. Now, added to that, we have the aluminum tariffs and the problems that surround it. According to the industry, that there is the cost of amortization of machinery and parts, which is being negatively affected by that. It's $125 per hectare per soya, and in comparison with $7 per hectare here. So in conclusion, with respect to the trade dispute with China, there is a major impact on production and revenue, and that can last. But you have to see it in perspective rather with the overall picture of cereal producers and seed producers in Quebec. The backstop or safety net in Canada, we feel, is insufficient. The Government of Canada should act quickly to put in place risk management policies that will settle trade disputes of this nature and will loosen up any type of restriction for market access. Thank you both, gentlemen.
Minutes.
I would like to start by thanking the Standing Committee for the opportunity to be here today. I'm a grain farmer in southwest Saskatchewan who, like many other producers across Canada, is very concerned about the notices of non-compliance we are seeing from China in regards to our canola seed exports. I'm sure many of you already know that China is the largest market for Canadian canola, accounting for approximately 40% of all canola generated in Canada. In 2018, canola seed exported to China generated $2.7 billion, and according to the Canola Council of Canada, the Canadian canola crop contributes $26.7 billion annually to the Canadian economy. Canola is a very important crop for the producers that grow it. Traditionally, it has been one of the main commodities to generate revenue for our operations. Canola is often a crucial part of a crop rotation, allowing for producers to diversify with crops that do not bring in as much revenue, but allow for more sustainable farming practices. On my farm, we rotate between cereals, oilseeds, and pulses. An example of a 4-year crop rotation is lentils, barley, canola, and durum wheat. Farmers are resilient. We are often referred to as eternal optimists, and we have worked hard to hedge our bets. We have worked hard to find ways to mitigate the risk that we face day to day. We grow a variety of crops, not only to be more sustainable, but to allow us to manage the risk that comes from relying on a global market to sell our product. If canola was the only commodity that we grew that was currently facing a trade barrier, and I'm sorry, I don't believe for a second that this has anything to do with science, this is political retaliation, we would be able to bunker down and take a couple years of lower prices. The frightening reality is that almost every crop being grown in Canada is currently struggling with one trade barrier or another. Italy has shut out our durum wheat. India has enforced heavy tariffs on Canadian pulses, effectively shutting their border to our product. Saudi has canceled grain imports affecting approximately 122,000 tons of barley feed, and now China is turning away our canola seed. Let's add to this a carbon tax in areas that are heading into their 3rd year of challenging weather, be that extreme drought or excess moisture. What we have brewing are conditions for the perfect storm. According to Statistics Canada's 2016 Census of Agriculture report, there are just over 107,000 farms in Western Canada. These farms account for approximately 85% of the crop acres in Canada, and approximately 97% of these farms are family-owned and operated. Agriculture and crop production are very important to the Canadian economy. So much so that the recent Barton report named agriculture as one of the possible top 6 drivers for the Canadian economy moving forward. This information was used to create ambitious targets for us to hit both domestically and internationally by 2025. Now I ask you, how are we in agriculture going to have any hope of meeting these targets when we do not have healthy bilateral trade agreements, relationships, or respect on the global trading platform our country relies on? There are different possibilities for how this can all play out. I think it's safe to say that we will see some last-minute changes being made to the amount of canola acres planted. I stood beside a farmer at the local co-op a couple days ago and listened to him cancel some of his canola seed, taking 160 acres out of his canola rotation. Now he's still going to seed that 160 acres. So the question becomes, what crop is a safer bet? If he's looking to keep his oilseed rotation, then it is most likely flax or mustard that he will put down. These are more niche markets, and what we can see happen is that these contract prices will drop as supply increases. We also could be looking at other end markets using China's notices of non-compliance to push the canola price lower, as we have limited trading options and, quite frankly, are still trying to move 2018's crop. Farmers are not looking for a handout, nor are we wanting to require a subsidy to cash flow our operations. That being said, increasing the amount farmers have access to in the cash advance program would help many manage this capital required to get through this year. Many producers are sitting on canola, lentils, and other crops from last year in the hopes that prices will go up and trade disputes will be resolved. We want regulations and policies in place that are science-based, allowing us to grow, invest, and continue fueling our sustainability and the Canadian economy. We want a government in power that isn't so internally focused on scandal that it forgets the importance of our global trade. Canada is a nation dependent on global trade, and we are at a logistical disadvantage when it comes to our location and the means with which we transport our export goods to market. We need to be very aware of these challenges and put the appropriate level of respect into our trade agreements and partners. As a grain farmer, I deal with a huge amount of risk and uncertainty because I cannot control the weather. We can control our actions, our relationships, and our bilateral trade agreements. Trade should not be the biggest wild card in the deck when it comes to the success of my family farming operation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. Now, Mr. Yusva for 6 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Yusva.
Thank you. Good day. I'm speaking today as an independent farmer from Northeast Saskatchewan. I've represented growers in various capacities for over 25 years. I am a past chairman of the Canola Council of Canada, and I appreciated the opportunity I had to represent growers and be an ambassador for canola by participating in a federal trade mission to China in 2014. I'll start with some comments on economic impact and pain on our revenue streams. Then I'll talk about the importance of open and stable trade relationships. And finally, I'll offer some solutions of steps to how to work towards solving this important matter. You've heard a lot about how important canola is. It's by far Canada's largest cash revenue generating crop for over 10 years now. 250,000 jobs across the country, 43,000 farmers, roughly speaking. On our farm, it's already declined over $1 a bushel. If it isn't solved soon, could easily decline to $2 a bushel over the coming months. Some rough math, about 20 million acres, $2 a bushel and 50 bushels an acre, that's 2 billion. This is only canola we're talking about, and doesn't include current inventory that's in the bin from last year's crop. Let's realize that canola is only one crop we grow. For many of us, it's our most important and most profitable crop, and it has the largest percent of acres on our farm. Let me say, farmers would rather receive their revenue from the marketplace. If the government does not play a role in resolving this matter quickly, the need for additional substantial business risk management programs increases will be very real. How will that impact your fiscal deficit? When trade's unpredictable, risk increases and prices decrease. Farmers may reduce inputs to reduce the risk and lower the cost as well. This has got ramifications up and down the value stream. You know, grain companies, processors, railways, economic activity and volumes at ports like Vancouver and St. Lawrence Seaway will all experience negative impacts as the entire industry contracts because of this risk in the marketplace. What multiple of 2 billion does this contraction of our economy become when all sectors of the canola industry are taken into account? Predictability and planning projections are thrown under a bus for all players up and down the value stream. In this environment, capital expenditures both on our farms and throughout the industry contract and reduce as organizations of all sizes reduce risk. This is a troubling trend as we see these non-science-based barriers to trade in multiple markets like China, India, Saudi Arabia, and Italy. Predictable, stable trade is a vital component to our nation's economy. Actions have consequences. A lack of action is also a decision and not a solution. It allows the problem to fester, grow, and exacerbate. We must learn from the past. Trade relationships must be nurtured constantly to maintain functionality and predictability. We rely on our national organizations and our federal government to constantly act on our behalf, to keep trade functioning in a proper, predictable manner. China, India, Saudi Arabia, and Italy are all examples of countries we suddenly have trade issues with. Even getting the CPTPP agreed upon was more challenging than it needed to be. This is a troubling trend. Why do we have these issues we've never had before? What have we as a nation learned from the recent past? There's a message here that when dealing with trade agreements and contracts, countries should only be dealing with commerce, and specific tolerances must be based on science. Surely we have learned that deviating from this only leads to massive risk and market disruptions. Actions do have consequences. When countries work and negotiate in good faith, issues can be resolved. We need open, stable trade, and we expect our government to help provide that. It shouldn't be too much to ask. Market access is vital to my bottom line and the other 43,000 growers. The ramifications run up and down the entire value chain. They also impact the entire nation when we start talking about the reduced volumes for Canadian National Railway, Canadian Pacific Railway, Vancouver Port, Thunder Bay, and the St. Lawrence Seaway. What can we do now that we are in this situation? First of all, let's realize the Asian nations respect people in positions of authority. They also appreciate ongoing stable relationships. Canada has not had an ambassador in China since early January. Why has this important position not been filled months ago? What message does that send? Fill this position immediately with an agriculture champion who understands China. Secondly, in the past with China, we can learn from experience. There have been trade issues before regarding dockage and blackleg concerns for canola. Through proper negotiation with high-level technical people from both countries, these issues were resolved. I would suggest high-level negotiations from our country are required. Strive to obtain a working arrangement immediately with a timeline to resolve the matter. This was done in the past with China, where trade was extended, allowing enough time for the specific issue to be resolved by a deadline. China has not yet been forthcoming with this information on this occasion. Since they have not proven it is a specific tolerance issue, we are overdue for a high-level political meeting to discuss what is going on and how to resolve it. I do support the efforts of the relatively new canola working group. Time is of the essence. We are already over a month since this canola issue started and no closer to it being resolved. I would also encourage high-level political discussions led by 2 senior ministers to get this file moving. I am encouraging you to take action on 2 fronts, one technical and one political. Time is precious, and our future and the economy of our nation is at stake. Thirdly, increase the renewable fuel mandate
Thank you,
for
Mr. Yuza.
biodiesel from 2%.
Thank you, Mr. Yuza. Unfortunately, we run out
Can
of
you
time.
at least let me conclude?
Well, I've got 6 minutes, and
My message is to take
you
action.
will have time to answer the questions. There'll be questions asked, so I have to be fair to everyone. Mr. Berthold, 6 minutes.
Monsieur Yusa, please finish.
Put on the shelf. Our very livelihoods are at stake. Market access is vital to the well-being of our nation. We are proud of the quality of our products. Quality is not in question. Stable and open trade is vital. Governments must constantly nurture our trading relationships. Canada must push back when appropriate with no exceptions. Canada has a team of world-class negotiators, people like Steve Verheuvel and others who have the ability to effectively negotiate on our behalf. China's a vital market. They like and need our product. Reach out to them with two high-level groups, one technical and one political. Fill the ambassador position with an ag champion. This matter needs urgent resolution. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Yuza. Je pense que votre conclusion était absolument...
Thank you very much. Your conclusion was absolutely necessary to be heard. Mr. Van Tassel, some people, since I've been dealing with the canola matter, have been asking me, is there really canola grown in Quebec? And I answer yes. We have a crush plant, a big one, in the riding in Quebec. But describe the industry to us. Well, the industry in Quebec is a little bit like Ontario's industry. There is more central, and so it's fresher. Now, the tonnage can't be the same. It's not at all like what is produced in the West, though. But this is it's a very important part of our crop rotation. 1 year out of 4, I grow canola. Have been doing that since '88. So my region produces a third of the canola produced in Quebec. So we're not talking big acreage like in the west of Canada because we don't have that kind of acreage, but it's important for us. Thank you. I'd like to move a motion in the light of the testimony that was heard today. I think it's very important, and it was clearly established by almost all the producers that we've heard today that there is a political issue here that is a major factor in the canola crisis. That in the light of what we have heard today by our witnesses, the committee invite the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food to appear before the committee to deal with the canola crisis and that this meeting be televised.
C'est nouveau, là, parce que ça a lumière des témoignages.
Okay.
Mais c'est les mêmes ministres que vous aviez discuté là, monsieur.
Oui, avec,
Mr. Berthold, is more or less the same motion that you have already submitted that was defeated in committee. Chair, what I don't understand with respect to this situation, I understand the argument that you're making, but since we started this, there is new information emerging every day since the very outset of the crisis. I say in the light of the new events and the new testimony, you give me the floor. Have you made your decision, your ruling, Chair? I'm just saying that your motion was already defeated in committee, so I cannot allow the motion to be tabled. Thank you, Chair. How much time do I have left? 4 minutes. Can you tell me, Chair, why the Liberals are so afraid of our talking about the canola crisis? The Minister of Agriculture talked about it in front of the Agriculture Committee. Why not? This is unacceptable. Mr. Vanderbilt, we've heard all of our witnesses almost today who have spoken to the crisis. And yes, we need to have we need to have the ministers testify. We've asked for that. We've asked for officials. We've asked for emergency debates in the House. We're told no all the time. What's the problem with you? What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of when we want to talk about the canola crisis? Why are you muzzling us? Why are you preventing us from speaking? The Minister of Agriculture absolutely has to come here and tell us how this whole file is being politically managed. Mr. Youssef, Mr. Van Tassel, and others have said that the canola crisis is a reflection of what is happening on the international scene, not just for canola and China, but India, Italy, other areas, other countries where there are all kinds of problems in terms of trade. But when we want to talk about these problems, what is the EU as the government, you as a parliamentarian doing? We want to talk together to try to solve the crisis. We're told, no, we can't talk about it. No, no, it's up to the Prime Minister. No. This afternoon is an international trade meeting where there will be international producers where they will go to the meeting to appear. But you ask for the Minister to appear? Oh, no, it's not possible. It's not possible. I find this unacceptable, Chair. I'd like to know why. We have a crisis here. The people are begging us this morning to act soon, quickly. And we have the opportunity here to hear some responses, to give them some answers, to know what is going to be happening. But what happens? All we hear is no, no, no. We can't hear the Minister of Agriculture. We can't hear the Minister of Global Affairs. We can't hear the Minister of International Trade. Because why? I don't know. It's supposed to be an international crisis, and there's no ambassador appointed. Who does that fall under to appoint an ambassador? Can't we hear about that from the Minister of Foreign Affairs? People are going to be able to judge the will of the parties here, the interest that they have in solving the canola crisis. We want to work with the producers on our side. We want to find a solution. It is clearly, Chair, we have heard what the producers told us this morning, and I believe that it would be normal that this committee here, the Minister of Agriculture, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Affairs as well, rather. I heard your decision, but I am persuaded that the motion I have just moved today is not the same as the one that I tabled earlier. Earlier, I asked for 3 ministers. You refused. All right. I was in agreement for 2 ministers, the ministers most directly concerned, who would be involved in the testimony that we heard today. I think that that would be what should be done today. But I understand that it's not the intention of the Liberal government to go any further, to have all information revealed about this crisis. Thank you. Mr. Berthold. 6 minutes, Mr. Breton. Thank you, Chair. I would like to tell the committee that I will be sharing my time with Mr. Poisson. We're in the solution mode here. With respect to the canola crisis, we've been working with the Minister of Agriculture, Foreign Affairs. They have appeared in the Foreign Affairs Committee. Madame Bibeau, the Minister of Agriculture, is working extremely hard on this, closely with the industry, to be able to settle the issue, to try to move on in this matter. We are working hard to adequately deal with this. Mr. Murray, and thank you to all for being here today. Mr. Van Tassel, to you too from Quebec. My question is for you two. You have said that you grow the crop once every 4 years in your crop rotation. That's what I understood from you, Mr. Van Tassel or Mr. Murray. So what are the export restrictions towards China? How will they affect you, your inventory, and your cash flow? What will this mean for you? And secondly, in AgriStability and AgriInvest, these are tools that presently exist and that are adapted to the problems that you may be facing. If I could begin. Personally, it's every 4 years because of diseases, and I have canola, soya, and other grains in between those 2 years. It's to prevent disease. That's why I do that rotation. Now, my silos start to be overfull with canola, and it does mean that there is therefore a cash flow. In February and last Tuesday, in actual fact, there was a tariff drop in soya, American soya. Initially it was with soya and then with canola. I am more affected with canola because 25% of my acreage is canola. So I'm having a problem with my storage in silos. But in 2018 rather, I sold that between $505 and $507 a ton. Now they're just offering me $35 to $40. So this is a huge difference for the same type of crop that I produced in 2018. And soya is slipping as well, but in less measurably. Yes, there are sales, and I have to say that we do keep some in reserve, but agri stability only kicks in when there is a 70% loss. And so in Canada, I think 30% of the producers use that program. It's really used for a real disaster. It's a disaster. Thank you. I don't know, Mr. Murray, if you want to add anything. If not, I'm going to give Mr. Poisson the floor. Well, thank you to all our panelists. I was a producer, and I've gone through crises like you, too, are going through. With respect to the marketing, how do you plan your marketing? Because we know that year after year, there is a variation, perhaps not as serious as this one that we're seeing now, but there is a variation that from time to time. How do you compensate? How do you alleviate your loss? Well, if I can, up until March for the 2018 marketing year, I started actually in 2017 with respect to what you can sell, because you have to have your stocks in reserve. Last May, the prices started to drop, so I had to slow down, but it can be staggered over several months or years, 2018 to 2019. I had a good price, but recently, when you see a drop in prices like that, you don't want to grow too much, because in actual fact, you're just going to have to keep it in a silo. So it affects the prices. Madame, you have a different type of farm based on canola. How do you do your marketing?
In my presentation, part of the reason that we rotate our crops is so that we have diversity, so that we have ability to go into different markets with different commodities. Now, if I'm looking at every single commodity that I grow being hit with a lower price because of a tariff or a trade issue, then I don't have any tools in my toolbox anymore to mitigate that risk. So this is a huge issue, because everything that I'm doing on my end doesn't work if the government isn't doing what they need to do on their end.
Gregor, you've got about a couple of minutes there. So.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses who came today. I don't really have a lot of time for a meaningful exchange, so I would just invite you to submit further briefs if you'd like this committee to consider it for our report. And I'd just like to add to what Mr. Berthold was saying, and just so everyone in this room can hear this, the last time we had a Minister of Agriculture appear before this committee was on November 29th. And I was at the Standing Committee on International Trade last week with Minister Carr, Minister Bibeau. We had our 1 hour. But Chair, and to my Liberal colleagues, I think what's very clear is that this is an evolving issue, and we need all hands on deck. And I would like, I think we absolutely have to look at inviting a minister. I mean, if ministers are so sure of their policies and what they're doing and everything, they're doing everything possible, surely they can come before this committee and defend their policies. And I think we absolutely must consider that at some point. So I just want to put on the record, it's April 9th today, 2019. Last time we had a minister before this committee, November 29th. We absolutely need to have someone. So, Ms. Reynolds, just a quick question to you. You gave some great testimony on our mental health study, and I was looking over that testimony. And I just wonder if you could say a few words as to, what kind of questions you would like the Minister of Agriculture to answer if we're one day successful at getting her to appear before this committee.
Thank you. I would like to ask for moving forward if we can be a little more aware of what our actions and reactions will be. We always seem to be on the defense, and I don't understand why. In regards to what's going on with canola, I'd like to know why the thought process did not exist when we arrested Meng that China was going to retaliate. That is what they do. We should have had someone in China at that point working on our trade agreement so that we didn't get here. So moving forward, I'd like to ask, what are we going to do to mitigate these risks? What are we going to do so that we don't keep being on the reactionary side of the fence?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McGregor. So unfortunately, that's all the time we have. So I want to thank all Monsieur Murray, Monsieur Van Tassel, Ms. Reynolds, and Mr. Yuzwa. Thanks for all participating. And that'll conclude our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.